Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me open by thanking my chairman, David Price, for listening to the views of those of us in the minority and changing the bill positively, in my judgment, for the most part. He has continued this subcommittee's tradition of bipartisanship and professionalism and hard oversight of this department, and where possible, accommodating the minority's interests. I also want to especially state my appreciation for the majority's commitment to take this bill to the floor under an open rule, as is the tradition for appropriations bills. Let me note especially this. The chairman and the subcommittee has significantly improved the hand that we were dealt at the outset on this bill, a hand that included an extremely late and bureaucracy-laden budget request from the White House with huge increases for policy and administrative offices at the expense of operations. And number two, a somewhat tightened 302B allocation that's nearly $500 million below the budget estimate. These conditions present a somewhat mixed picture about how this new administration and the current House leadership are prioritizing security nearly 8 years after 9/11. Indeed, I find it incredibly ironic and disappointing that just 1 week ago, the President released a 77-page strategy on stopping the Mexican drug cartels that professes the need to enhance our intelligence and drug interdiction capabilities, and yet his 2010 budget request only would marginally increase DHS's intelligence office and Border Patrol, and actually proposed cuts to Customs and Border Patrol's operational assets and Coast Guard personnel. A prime example of where the administration's rhetoric doesn't match reality. Given the current threat environment, now is not the time to shortchange our investment in security and leave our frontline personnel in the lurch, waiting for the tools required to fulfill their mission. Now, having said all of that, I do think the chairman has endeavored to make this bill better and to make up for those deficiencies by somewhat scaling back on the administration's plans for more bureaucrats, making some prudent enhancements to operations, and producing a pretty good bill, I think, for 2010. Not to say it's perfect. I would have written it somewhat differently, but it is a good bill. Let me state a couple of concerns. First, I'm concerned about the bill's funding levels for operational and surveillance assets. While the chairman has made some enhancements to operations, more could and should be done to equip the operators in the field. With the drug war raging in Mexico and the drug supply lines bustling from South America, we must not only step up operations along the southwest border, but also increase our interdiction efforts in the source and transit zones. Second, our colleague, Congressman Wolf, has already well articulated that before Guantanamo detainees are transferred to the U.S., Congress needs to see the administration's plan. And that very requirement was adopted earlier this week by this committee during markup of the 2010 Commerce, Justice, Science Bill, and similar, albeit weakened, provisions are also included in the supplemental. As part of that plan, however, it's DHS's responsibility to conduct a thorough threat assessment of each and every detainee. And when I say assessment, I mean a thorough scrub of the very real risks these terrorists may pose to both our communities and to prison populations that may be susceptible to their undue influence of extremists seeking to spread their warped brand of radical ideology and hatred. Bottom line, we need to know the threat posed by the transfer of these terrorists to the U.S. if that should occur. This is a deadly serious issue, and one that I intend to address with an amendment later today, one I hope all of you can support. Third and finally, I'd be remiss if I did not clarify my position on a piece of language contained in the report accompanying today's bill. On page 49, the report says, and I quote, that ICE must have no higher immigration enforcement priority, quote, in reference to the identification and removal of criminal aliens. Now, I know, like you, I agree that we should emphasize the deportation of criminal aliens. And over the past 2 years, I've supported the efforts in this regard with one major caveat, that an emphasis upon criminal aliens will not come at the expense of other critical immigration enforcement functions. Every time I hear somebody profess that ICE should have no higher immigration enforcement priority than criminal aliens, I must remind them that none of the 9/11 hijackers could be classified as so-called criminal aliens, and all of the 9/11 terrorists exploited the legal immigration system. So immigration enforcement matters to our homeland security, and we must not lose sight of that fact as we attempt to deport criminal aliens. Mr. Chairman, it's my hope we can work together to address some of these concerns and further improve what I believe to be a thoughtful and fairly well-constructed bill. I've made it clear my intention is to support this bill, but I will also continue to voice suggestions for how it can be strengthened. I want to thank again the Chairman Price for his friendship and his comradeship. We've worked closely together. I admire his work, and we must thank the terrific staff that has devoted so much time and effort to this bill. It's a tough bill. It's a tough subject to deal with, but the staff has worked long and hard to help us make this the bill I think that you can support. I yield.